Thank you, Nick. Thanks for the committee having me here. Am I hot? Okay, good. Can't hear myself. So when Nick reached out to me about engineering open house, I figured what better talk to give than about technical founders. I'm sure many of you are engineers. I'm hoping many of you are engineers. Otherwise, this is going to be very boring for you. So I'm assuming a lot of you are either looking to work at big companies or start your own companies, and that's where I really wanted to gear this talk. So, hi. I'm a simplist. It doesn't get any more exciting than this black and white. So I'm very simple. I think Nick was a little disappointed in the color I chose, but work with me here. So a little bit about myself. I was born in Poland. At the age of 3 years old, my mother brought us to Chicago. Shortly thereafter, my father and my mother divorced. I lived with my mother, who went to work at a factory making light bulbs for planes. There she met my stepdad, who was a general manager who also ran his cleaning business on the side. And they fell in love, and the rest is history. But he owned this cleaning business. He hired her to work for him. And they cleaned medical buildings, among other things, the factory that they both worked at. And at night, my mother didn't have anywhere to leave me. I was about 10 years old by now. She didn't have the money for a babysitter. She didn't have any relatives in the area. We moved from Poland. So she brought me along on these trips to these medical offices at like 8 p.m., because that's when doctors stop working, right? And for some reason, doctors and secretaries and nurses can't keep the staples in pieces of paper. They drop them to the floor, they get stuck in the floor, and the vacuum cleaner breaks trying to rip them out. So my mother made me a deal for a penny per staple. If I were to rip that out and not break the vacuum cleaner, I'd earn that money. And on a good day, I'd clear about $1. There on my hands and knees, ripping out the staples, sweating, 10 years old, I got nothing better to do. I tendered my resignation shortly thereafter. It wasn't enough money to stimulate me. I figured there were better things out there for me. My mom and I are on still good terms, a little rocky because of that, but she's a good manager. So I went on to start a company called Malwarebytes. How did that happen? I was about 13 years old, so about 3 years unemployed by that time, and I got my parents' computer infected. It was a shared computer. It was one of those big boxy things that arrived in a 6x12 box that you would unpack from Dell, and I got it infected trying to pirate a video game. That was still cool back then, using Kazaa and all those other tools to steal software. And I got my parents' computer infected, and pretty much to avoid a whooping, I had to go fix it. And it took me 72 hours. Here's what I did. I Googled my symptoms, like WebMD, and I landed on a forum called spywareinfo.com. And spywareinfo.com was just this help site, a forum that people would post their problems and say, please help me. And volunteers, for whatever reason, wanted to spend their extra time during the day helping these people remove malware from their computer. I had pop-ups everywhere. I had Bonsai Buddy kind of running around my screen. I think you guys have seen some of that. We call that crapware nowadays. So I didn't know what to do. I went to this forum, and one of our security researchers actually, at the time, helped me remove this piece of malware. She ran me through this super intensive process of running that tool and then this tool and then turn your computer upside down. I mean, every step in the book just to get this thing off my computer. And it took 72 hours. I said, I'm really thankful, but I'm super angry. It took 3 days. And so I stuck around that community of people. I never understood why they would help others for free. I just didn't understand that concept until that day. So I stuck around that community and started building little freeware applications that went after specific types of malware. So imagine the Bonsai Buddy. Who's had Bonsai Buddy? Come on, somebody had to have. Okay, there's a couple of innocent hands going up there. Bonsai Buddy was this tool that shipped with a lot of other software, and as soon as you installed him, he would run around your screen and try to give you advertising, because that's what you wanted, right? Which is why we call it crapware. So she helped me remove all of this. I had Symantec or McAfee or another big brand antivirus installed at the time. Who here has antivirus installed? Okay, a big portion of you. Who still gets infected? Okay, a smaller portion, but still significant. So had a big antivirus installed. I didn't quite understand why. I had an antivirus. An antivirus is supposed to stop me from getting infected. Why did I get infected? It boggled my mind. Again, stuck around the community. My stepfather actually bought me a Visual Basic 6 for Dummies book. One of those yellow ones that makes you feel like a complete idiot, but teaches you everything under the sun. You feel really like scared reading it in public. You probably don't do that often. And Visual Basic 6 in 2004 or 5 was already 10 years out of date. So I picked a programming language that was 10 years out of date at the time, and built the first version of the software that actually ran on those computers. So moving on, built all these freeware utilities and built a product called Rogue Remover. And a terrible, terrible name. It went after a specific type of infection again, and this was the rogues. So the fake antivirus stuff that comes up on your computer and says, we found a ton of crap on your computer, please pay us to remove it. And my mom fell for this. She entered her credit card details for an $89 product that did absolutely nothing. We had to go call the bank, we had to get the money back, we had to cancel the credit card. Why was she exposed to this? So I built the first tool called Rogue Remover, which just removed all that crap off the computer. And a guy named Bruce from the middle of nowhere, Massachusetts, contacted me and he said, you missed this one, and you missed that one, and I found another one, and here's one. And I went, where the hell is he finding these things? They all had really creative names like XP Anti-Spyware. It looked really legit. My mom thought so. Further on in life, I asked her, can you show me how you install these tools? And she just goes, speed. That's how she installs these tools. Just lets everything get installed. Yeah, that's, our own employees are guilty of that, so. So we went after this. He found all of these, and I Googled them. I couldn't find anything about it. I thought he was actually working for the bad guys and screwing with me just to waste my time. Turns out he's really good at how he finds malware, how he analyzes it. This is a 40-year-old, gray-haired, long-haired, don't care kind of guy from the middle of Massachusetts, and I said, hey, do you want to build a full-fledged anti-malware product with me? And he just said yes. So I'm the 16-year-old kid coming back from high school, from football practice, talking to this 40-year-old guy. Try to explain that to your mother. We're just talking online, Mom. It's really okay. We're building an antivirus. Now, try to explain that to your wife, who Bruce was married at the time. I'm just talking to this 16-year-old boy online. It was tough for us both. So I met this guy, Bruce, and we start developing this anti-malware product. And our story was, screw the antivirus companies. They don't know what they're doing. They're really bad. The two of us can totally take on this challenge. Learned that the hard way. It's a little harder than that. But we started building the first version of the product. And in 2008, we released it. It was called Malwarebytes Anti-Malware. And I was telling some of the EOH committee earlier this afternoon, somebody gifted me that domain name. It's a pretty creative name. I was thinking something like hurricane or tornado, and I landed at Malwarebytes. Who knows? I don't know how that happened. But Malwarebytes launched. We launched the first version of the product on January 21st, 2008, and it was an immediate success. People started recommending it. The original community that helped power the development of the software, we went straight to them and said, what would you want to see? And they gave us feedback on that. So it was really crowd-built, built for these engineers, researchers, who were helping these people for free online to automate some of this process for them. That's really where the idea spawned. 6 months later, I'm still doing all the development in Visual Basic 6. The UI looks like crap. The product is super slow. We're talking about a language that was built 10 years ago. Today, they don't even teach that except for maybe CS100. So a guy named Doug in, again, the middle of nowhere, Rhode Island, just graduated from Princeton in a master's in physics and is mid-PhD in physics, goes and says, I just want to come work for you. I want to go build software that does this same exact thing. So he dropped out of his PhD program. This kid was getting 4.0s across the board. Dropped out of his PhD program to come build software for me. So he became our CTO. That was the third founder. The fourth founder was a guy named Marcus in the Bay Area. And he was our chief operating officer. He was the business guy of the family. And I'll get into all of that in a minute on why that's important and what that means. But that's the reason the Malwarebytes company is in the Bay Area. When we started to actually hire people that were central, we picked the most business savvy guy. One of my biggest regrets is actually not sticking to Chicago because you pay for, half the cost for engineers, half the cost for rent. The Bay Area is a very expensive place. So that's Malwarebytes. We're about 200 people today. About 90 of them are in San Jose, California. 25 are in Clearwater, Florida. We We have an office in Cork, Ireland. We have an office in Estonia. And the rest are sprinkled all around. We hired a lot of the same researchers that the people that helped me on the forums originally, we hired them to join our company. It's really easy to come up to somebody and say, you know that thing you're already doing? Let me pay you for it. It's a really easy conversation to have. So technical founders, why is that important? Well, first of all, a disclaimer. So I make a lot of generalizations. That doesn't mean they're true. It's my experience. Your mileage may vary. I interviewed 5 founders, CEOs, leaders, whatever you want to call them, that are still active or not in organizations. They're my friends for this talk. And finally, 24 out of the 100 best CEOs are actually technical. So that's from the Harvard Business Review. So I'm not just making this up. Why technical founders are important. There's data there. So why are we important? And I say we because I'm a technical founder. I started the company. I should tell you why I'm technical. So I did attend the University of Illinois. I graduated in computer science. People ask me all the time, why did you stay in school? How was that experience? Well, I'll tell you, it was tough. But threat of death from my mother kept me in school. That's one. And about 2 years in, I started realizing that I really had something. But I figured, you know, I'm so close to ending and getting a degree. So I stuck in for that period. I lived in the dorm rooms my freshman year. I lived at the apartments my sophomore and junior year. I moved into a fraternity house my senior and super senior year. And talking to the press in a fraternity house in your room while people are running like hooligans outside the hall can pose some challenges, to say the least. But really great support system on that. My fraternity brothers are actually, some of them are here supporting me. But you know, they're another reason that I stayed at the University of Illinois, quite honestly, just meeting the best friends that I've ever had. So again, that's why I'm technical. I graduated computer science. I'm not saying I'm a good programmer. I said I graduated from the University of Illinois. So why are we important? Well, first of all, product is the soul of the company. That's one of the reasons a technical founder or technical leader, CEO, is important to a company. When you buy a GoPro, you don't just buy it because you need an overpriced camera, right? You buy it because it's been engineered to the absolute best. You buy it because it can withstand the hazards that you're going to put it through and the ease of downloading the video, withstand Mother Nature. When you buy from Apple, you don't just buy because you want an overpriced iPhone or Mac. I'm running Windows here. The hardware is just amazing. The 12-hour battery life, the engineering that went into this product, whether it's the computer science or the electrical engineering or the mechanics of it, it's got the best user interface. The engineers really thought about that. They collaborated with other engineers or UX or UI designers and built a good product. And more importantly, the best engineered apps. You've got the market, you know, out there for these apps. When you buy a Tesla, you don't just buy a car with 4 wheels that you want to spend $100,000 on, right? You buy it because it's a laptop on wheels. You don't just need a car, you need the best car, the best suspension, the over-the-air updates, I mean, it's the best safety rating. It's been engineered to absolute perfection. And Elon Musk is an engineer. So I think one of the reasons that Malwarebytes exists is because the product actually works, whereas the antivirus products don't. We sucked at marketing the first couple of years in business. All of it was through word of mouth because the product worked. So having a technical founder, me, and another co-founder, Doug, and another co-founder, Bruce, that actually cared about the product and engineered and put sweat equity into that product gets you the Teslas, gets you the Apples, gets you the GoPros of the world. So yeah, I mean, we sucked at marketing. It was all through word of mouth. And engineers get that, right? We're less willing to cut corners. I've delayed product releases because the UI just wasn't right. There was a button that was misplaced. We have a lot of attention to details. I'm sure Steve Jobs, I mean, you know, he does not cut corners, right? He didn't cut corners. You've heard probably in the news and in articles how difficult he was to work with, how he wanted the circuit board, even though you couldn't even see the circuit board, perfectly aligned. He wanted it to be symmetrical and you know, no curvy lines, everything straight. So a circuit board that nobody's ever going to see, that's locked in a computer that you can't take apart, had to be perfect. So as engineers, we're actually beautifully naive. We're stupid. We really are. We don't know how hard it is to actually start a company. And if we did, we wouldn't do it. So we take those risks. As engineers, we're incredibly naive, and I actually think that's a good thing. It's beautifully naive. We're willing to take risks. We're willing to tinker and build something over a weekend, whereas, I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine has a really great business plan. He's been writing it for years, revising it over and over again. He's never built anything. It's just a plan. And it's never going to leave his hard drive as a Word document. And that's all he does every day, is show me this plan and goes, what do you think? Well, great, get a prototype built. Yeah, let me just revise some things, right? So we actually take the risk to build a prototype. And even if it doesn't work, so what? So what? We toss it away and build another one. And we're overly confident as engineers. We know that it can be done, and we know how, so we're more willing to execute on that. We have an agile mentality. We're able to break tasks down. A lot of you may be computer programmers, sprint planning and the Scrum process. You're able to break things up into little bits and accomplish each little bit. And the same goes true in business. You're able to really break things up into smaller pieces and consume those. We have all the facts about making a product decision, or rather a decision, and see how it actually impacts the product. As an engineer, you know a little bit about that. Debugging a business is actually similar to debugging code. You want to sometimes strangle the compiler or person you're talking to, and that's how we solve those problems. So actually, problem solving is the only skill we're taught in engineering. I haven't learned anything but problem solving at the University of Illinois, and I think that's a really useful skill. And we continue innovating. Finally, technical founders continue innovating. We don't let the products get bloated and useless. Far too many times I see another person come in, the professional CEO, and suddenly the product's just crap, right? They look for other ways of monetization. You don't have that technical founder who believes that the product needs to be designed in such a way that's just to perfection. Every technical founder and leader I talk to or I know is just continuously thinking, how can I improve this engineering process? How can I build a better product here? How can I build something better here? Okay, but we have flaws, lots of them. Marketing, sales, finance, ring any bells? We're not good at these things, right? There's more to a business than just engineering. You can have the best product ever if nobody's heard about it and nobody's going to use it, right? But I think it's easier to learn these things than it is to actually learn how to program and problem solve and debug problems. So I think as technical leaders or people that are technical, we're actually at an advantage of starting a company, in my opinion. I had to learn how to do the finance side of things by getting a bill from the IRS on not filing the taxes properly. That's learning by doing. When my CFO came on board, the chief financial officer, he went and said, how do you know some of these things? And I said, by doing, right? And we tinker, we experiment, we take risks. From the sales side, I couldn't sell myself out of a paper bag. We sold the product for 10 cents per seat to businesses. We set a lifetime license for consumers. That's not a sustainable business model. That's since changed, but in the early days, we made decisions that were just foolish in these aspects, right? From the marketing side as well, we didn't do any marketing. There was no, aside from word of mouth, there was no marketing for the products or the company. And unfortunately, this is where venture capitalists, I think, go wrong sometimes by replacing technical founders with professional CEOs and business people and MBAs and the guys that went to Harvard, right? That's not always bad. If the CEO just really can't do any of these functions and can't be held accountable, that's bad, and that should happen. But really, I firmly believe that a lot of the CEOs that you see that have built great products get replaced far too early instead of being surrounded by people that know what they're doing in these functions. And if that leader or that founder is replaced, I think it loses that technical culture. And even beyond that, it might lose all of the culture. He or she is that person that has brought the company to where it is today. So back to flaws, we get bogged down. Sometimes we get bogged down by details. We spend too long, like Steve Jobs, I was telling you guys, we spend too long perfecting it, and it actually hurts our agility. So one of the stories that we repeat in the office against my will is one of the first engineers we hired, I had him up until 4 a.m. moving a button pixel by pixel on the website. And every time he'd send me a new version, I say, it's a little to the right, please. And his wife's calling him from the bedroom, when are you coming home? And he's like, well, Marcin's having me move buttons pixel by pixel, right? And I'm not saying that's the wrong thing. I think the site looked really great. I think the alignment was perfect. But moving things pixel by pixel on the guy's first day for a site that that we needed to launch to just a couple of users at the time, maybe that was a little excess. So in moderation, I think this is an advantage. So perfecting and getting bogged down in the details and getting in the weeds and even coding once in a while keeps it healthy, I think. We're not people. As engineers, no, that's not a typo. We're not people. We don't like icebreakers at events. It takes us a while to get out of our shell, right? Even today, I consider somebody connecting me with another person as burdensome. Just gonna put that out there. Sometimes I just don't want to get coffee with this guy or girl, right? So we're not people, whereas a lot of the business and finance and sales side, they love making connections and I want to meet everybody and they remember names. I'm terrible with names, right? My compiler is my best friend, right? I love the programming. I love working with my little robot over here or whatever it might be from an engineering sense. Okay, so I'm assuming a lot of you are engineers, but what if I'm not technical? Find a co-founder that is, okay? I had Marcus. Marcus was my co-founder. Same goes for the other way around. So if you're not technical, find a co-founder that is. But vice versa. If you are technical, find a co-founder that isn't. Mine was Marcus, the guy in the Bay Area who said, Marcin, we need to get an office open because we have way too many remote people right now. He said, Marcin, we need to build a management console. And he was thinking ahead of on the sales and finance side. So co-founders. Steve Wozniak had Steve Jobs. There are many other technical, non-technical pairs out there. But one thing is important. Finding a co-founder is like picking a wife. It'll either work out really, really well and be advantageous, or it will end up in a divorce, and you're going to give up half your company. Okay? I've seen this happen far too often. So with co-founders, I can go on and on about this topic. I had 3 co-founders, right? And all of them had different personalities. All of them were extremely difficult and complicated to work with in some capacity. Doug and I would chew each other out about lines of code that just didn't matter day in and day out. Marcus and I, I'd pretend I know something about sales, marketing, and finance, and he'd yell at me about this and that. So really getting those relationships, that trust is super, super important. It makes it easier for the business to be balanced. And most importantly, they have to work as hard as you. Having a lazy co-founder is what leads to these kinds of problems. Your best friend is not a co-founder. This is a really important point. I've seen this mistake made so many times. Friendships ruined, devastated by this. When they do something wrong, will you actually enforce it as their best friend? If they make a wrong decision in the business, are you going to have that discussion with them as a co-founder, as a best friend? It just doesn't happen. How do you have that difficult conversation? Do you risk your friendship for that? And then more importantly, who's the CEO? Oh, we're both the CEO. It doesn't work that way. In the venture capitalist world, if you pitch that to a VC, they're gonna chew you up and spit you out. They're gonna say, when tough decisions need to be made, who's gonna make them? We both are. Well, what if you don't agree? We will. What if the conversation can keep going. And I made this distinction very important when I met my co-founders. In the early days, yeah, we agreed on everything. This is great. But then things started to go wrong sometimes. And they want to go a different way, and I go, a different way. And that distinction really matters. When you raise money, of course, again, the VCs ask this question a lot when they see 2 founders that go, yeah, we're both the CEO. It's just something that's difficult. So finally, whether they're your co-founder or not, they're just a regular employee for you, definitely surround yourself with smarter people. That's not intuitive, right? You want to be the smartest person in the room. You want to hold the stick. And I know the only reason I'm successful is when I walk in a room at our offices, I'm the dumbest person in that room. And I better be, because, that's the culture you should have in your organization. You should be hiring smarter engineers than you can ever do, than you can ever outperform, right? So the future of entrepreneurship. In my opinion, head-to-head, a technical entrepreneur will walk all over a non-technical entrepreneur. That's my opinion. When visiting VCs, venture capitalists last year, I kind of realized what they were looking for. So Malwarebytes raised $30 million last year, last January, and we met with 30 or so firms in the Bay Area, and ones that you've heard of, ones that you've never heard of. And they were all looking for different things, but there was a commonality. They were looking for people, products, so team, people, product, and market. For people or team, it was a little bit of a distinction on the small business side and the medium business. Malwarebytes was a medium business at the time. We were profitable, we were bootstrapped, we were cash flow positive when we went searching for money. After 5 years, we better have been. And then there's small businesses, just two co-founders that are building an app. They're looking for different things. On the small side, on the small business side, just two founders walk into a VC's room. They're looking for somebody that's hungry. They're looking for entrepreneurs that will work 14 hours a day just building the app, getting it right, getting it ready to ship. On the large business side or the medium business side, like Malwarebytes, they're looking for a complete team. They're thinking, how much effort am I going to have to put into this to bring the right people around? More importantly, I think they're looking for market and product, which is a little bit interesting. They want to know that this is going to be something that a lot of people are going to be using, or a lot of businesses are going to be using, and that it's a solid product and has great reviews and it's good. So they're probably not that interested in cat weddings, for example. If you're an entrepreneur in cat weddings, they're probably not interested in raising money for that. They're looking for their billion-dollar exit. So I don't think any investor would touch that. So that's kind of my spiel on technical entrepreneurs, technical founders, technical leaders. I think they're really important to any organization. I'm really good at answering questions, so I breeze through this. This is me talking slow, by the way. So I'd love to take questions from you guys about my experience. There's some microphones set up. I think Nick's going to run around vigorously and hand over mics or something. I don't know. But I'll turn it over to you guys.
If you have any questions, the microphone's here. Just go ahead and approach them. The rest of this discussion is really going to be a conversation between everyone here and Marcin. So, well, first off, thank you.
Thanks. If you don't ask a question, Nick has to ask me a question. It's going to be really embarrassing.
I guess I'd like to ask you if you could tell us in layman's terms, some of us are not at all computer programmers anymore, why your product is better than the other guys.
Sure, that's a good question, right? So Malwarebytes was founded to really focus on the removal side of things. So when your antivirus fails, we go after the stuff that it really sucks at. So it's really more of a niche play than our software is better than detecting everything, right? So antivirus focuses on this. We choose to take the sliver that they're really bad at, the stuff that's infecting our users. I'll give you an example. There's a lab out there that does antivirus testing to see the efficacy of those products. And on the first test that we ever performed, we scored 2%. Out of 100% of samples they showed, we scored 2%. They weren't very good at doing these kinds of tests. We asked for the samples. They were all from 1988, 1990, 1992. We weren't even around at the time, right? So we don't focus on the old stuff. We don't focus on the static kind of malware. We focus on the polymorphic, the stuff that's changing every single day, every single minute, every single hour. We hope that we can detect something before the malware writer picks up his keyboard and starts writing it. And the way we do that is through behavioral analysis. We've set up a lot of automation, whereas antivirus, their engines were built in the 90s, right? The malware was a lot different back then. So to put it shortly, we focus on the stuff that they're really bad at. We've picked that niche market, and we're really good at that. So we ask companies and consumers to run their antivirus alongside Malwarebytes. Same concept as a seatbelt and an airbag. That's our kind of pitch.
Cool. Hey, Marcin. My name's Bo. I had a quick question. You mentioned kind of like you grew into this CEO role, but you're coming from a technical background, and you're still like not necessarily a super people person. Like how do you mentioned like the coffee example, just like how do you balance those two, like being the CEO and having to do these other responsibilities that probably you're not like coding all the time, even though you enjoy doing that. Like, do you take active roles in like balancing those, and do you ever miss like being just like a technical worker?
I do. I really do. I keep telling my VP of engineering, we're still working with some of the older code base that I built, and he is always frustrated, and he's a 55-year-old guy. He's like, why is this piece of shit not working? And I go, just put me in. I will fix it. Just put me in. And he's like, Marcin, back off. So letting go is something that took a lot of getting used to. I made employees quit because I couldn't. I made engineers go, Marcin just keeps getting involved. I can't do this. I'm out. That was a learning experience in itself, just being able to let go from these things and know that the business can't scale if you're focusing on this, right? And just knowing that you have to focus on this. Learning from others, like on the sales, marketing, and finance side, just hiring the smarter team around you than you are about those things has definitely helped me improve. I can focus on that, see the exciting stuff that I like around that, and learn to let go on the stuff that I shouldn't be controlling anymore.
Thanks.
Yep, thanks, man.
So a very important piece of advice you gave us is that your best friend is not a co-founder. But something that happens to us engineers is some of our best ideas come about when we are having conversations with our best friends. And I have in fact founded an organization and then destroyed it because my best friend was my co-founder. So how do you resolve that conflict? Like how does the idea move forward if two best friends build the idea together?
Yeah, I mean, it's not impossible, right? But there needs to be rules of engagement, I think. I think you need to set responsibilities and role clarity. Again, back to the co-CEO stuff. You can't be making decisions as a committee, I think. But like Penn and Teller, for example, they're not even friends, right? They don't see each other outside of, and that's why they've been able to sustain a working relationship for decades now. I'm not saying it's impossible. I think I've seen a lot of friendships ruined if you really need to set those rules of engagement and understand each other. And this is funny. I hired an executive coach. This is what happens when you get to a size where you've taken VC funding and you're growing as a company. I hired an executive coach and I went, why did I do this? I don't need a therapist right now. I don't need somebody telling me that I'm bad at this, wrong at this. So the first thing they did was a 360 of how I work with my peers, and they all put in feedback, and then his name is Mabood, shows me the feedback, and the good slide is 1, 2, 3 bullet points. The bad slide is 3 pages of just like the smallest fonts. You can self-awareness, right? But I learned how to work with those people, and I'm sure you can learn to work with your best friend as well. It's just when that time comes where he's wrong, you're right, at least in your opinion, and you need to be able to execute. You can't get that paralysis.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Quick question. This is more about like the Malwarebytes actual company. Are you guys going to actually like expand to like say Windows Phone or iPhone or like car operating systems for your anti-malware?
Yeah. Who's worried about this actually getting malware? Yeah. Okay. Couple more. Oh, this is interesting. I should write this down. So that's interesting. When we started the company, Windows malware was the most prevalent. It still is today. You see the Target breach, the Home Depot breach, JP Morgan breach, Anthem last month, I think, Social Security numbers got stolen. A lot of that is still point of sales running Windows devices. We started moving to the Android side. We built an app for Android, and I went, this is going to detect nothing. This is crazy. Why would we build this? We just hired 2 engineers for nothing. And it turns out that there are 3,000 Americans each day that are infected by Russian text messaging Trojans. And I just couldn't believe it. I had no idea where they're getting infected with this stuff. So it's an experiment that we're trying out. We're investing more into the mobile side. The Linux and Mac side is interesting, but again, it's a lot of effort for what's the return on that. So it's a decision I made, and actually, again, my colleagues are telling me you got to invest heavily in here. So these are spirited debates that we're having internally as a company to see, okay, mobile is growing. We all agree to that. How can we better protect users? And I think we're of the opinion that actually privacy is way more important to you guys than an actual, the risk of a virus or malware. If your phone's not rooted, that's probably not going to happen. But I think you care about the apps that can take your money, the apps that can access your calendar, and the apps that can change your Facebook profile. I'm assuming that's way more important, and these are the discussions that we're having right now.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Marcin, really enjoyed your talk. You mentioned this idea of hiring founders that are better than you. But take the example of being a developer or a coder. How do you qualify for founders for instance, design or marketing or sales when you have no experience in those areas?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, right? I haven't gone through that process. So one way of doing that is try people before you buy them. It doesn't always work out. If it's not your best friend, if it's just a guy that you found working in a lab somewhere, the worst thing you can do is give him 50% equity for signing on, right? That's the common mistake. I made that. My founders know that some of them came on really late in late stage, and I gave up the farm on some of that stuff. So I think trying a little bit and saying, hey, can you, if you design this and you make it look good, we can get you into this company from a designer standpoint. Paying for the work, if you have the extra cash, just to see, again, try before you buy, could be one way. But as a founder that's trying to be bootstrapped, you're giving out equity. That's where your money is. That's your currency. You can try to use some social capital. Come on, just one free project, and then we'll see how it works. But really, your currency is the equity, and that's what hurts sometimes. You give 10% up for a company, and
Yeah, makes sense.
the co-founder's not working as hard as you thought, right?
First of all, thank you very much. You've mentioned several times about layered security, how Malwarebytes is meant to work alongside with other antivirus software. Is there anything in specific that you would suggest looking for in choosing an antivirus to run alongside Malwarebytes?
I can't give you any names. I would avoid anything that's yellow and red. There's a couple out there that are potentially from the Czech Republic. That's one that was developed. But in all seriousness, there's a wide disparity between the efficacy of a lot of these products. If you have any antivirus that's not yellow or red, and you have Malwarebytes, and you have some kind of backup product, and you have other types of security like a router in the home and local admins maybe even revoked, you're fine. It's a lot of it is actually the error is usually between the keyboard and the chair. Especially in big business, that's how they're getting infected. I was telling you the story of my mom just clicking through as quickly as she can to install a product. I wish I could give a common sense seminar to a lot of people about this. If a link comes and you don't know who the Nigerian prince is, don't click on the link. And if you do, you're going to get infected. Something's going to get on that computer.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Hello. I have a question more along the lines of finding these co-founders, because it's really hard to find someone with the right tool set. How do you go about finding people that you know somewhat well that you want to found a company with?
So as I was preparing for this talk, I actually Googled, co-founders and technical co-founders and this and that. And one of the biggest questions that kept coming up is exactly that. How do you find the right co-founder? I think a lot of it is trial and error. Tap the resources that you have. I found mine on a forum, a spyware removal forum. Like, what are the chances of these kinds of people meeting? It's like a cat wedding forum. What are the chances that the two people of similar interests would be there? Ours was interesting because we were on a security forum. Clearly, we're both passionate about security. Clearly, we're trying to help people for free. So we have those traits about each other, right? So finding people that are interested in similar things, have the same passion. So security was mine. Security was Doug's. Security was Bruce's. Find somebody that shares that passion. But again, on the other hand, you want to diversify too. So if you bring on another co-founder or another employee, maybe somebody that complements a lot of those skills and traits.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Marcin.
Hey, Gino.
Hi, remember my name. So I'm a business major, and I've talked to a lot of professors and a lot of people who are a lot more technical than I will probably ever be. And they always tell me that, you got to know the technical side. So from a technical founder standpoint, what are the things you want someone on the business side to really have a knowledge of? Maybe skills or, heck, just general knowledge. What would you recommend?
Yeah. So, learning how to build a very simple app would be an interesting. I'd ask people, have you ever dabbled in that kind of stuff? But again, I'm really focusing on the computer science stuff here because I'm a computer science major. I work with programming all day, so I don't know necessarily the answer to your question for the mechanical side or electrical or nuclear. Nick, maybe you want to answer that one, but yeah. So.
Okay, thanks, Marcin.
Yeah, not a good answer, is it? We'll talk later, Gino.
Hey, Marcin. So my question is more about kind of when you're growing your company, especially between a technical and non-technical co-founder, you guys kind of have, especially myself as from a technical background, you guys have very different maybe opinions about what you want to put your resources into. You know, a technical founder may want to put their resources more into, building up the product, making it really nice, pixel by pixel. And a non-technical co-founder, the sales, marketing management may want to, do expansion, marketing, and sales. How do you kind of, come together and communicate on that?
Yeah, it's tough, and setting those rules of engagement, I'm the CEO or I'm in charge of this, and this is what I think, we should be doing. I didn't mention this, but 2 of my co-founders are gone. They decided to part ways because eventually the dream, was misaligned for them. Doug wanted to go back to his PhD in physics and start a physics company, right? So eventually that diversion is there, and it's when that divorce happens, it inevitably will. I mean, 40 years in business together, how far can you go, for example? It's really that, I keep saying that rules of engagement. Who's the CEO? Who's in charge of this? Who's in charge of that? Having role clarity is something you will struggle with every day, especially early on in the business when everybody's trying to do everything to keep the wheels on the bus from falling off. Don't overstep each other's roles and functions, right? If you have that role clarity and everybody knows what they're doing, I think you'll be all right.
All right, thank you very much.
Hey, enjoyed your talk. I just want to ask a question that I'm pretty sure you're aware of mute-torrent installing software on people's computers that actually uses their CPU to mine bitcoins.
Yeah.
Whose fault is it? Do you think, as someone who represents Malwarebytes, do you say directly that it's the fault of mute-torrent just for releasing an app that does that, or would you say that it's someone's fault who just didn't read the fine print and just hit next and install their stuff?
Yeah. So that's a very interesting question. The trend has become that, especially on the Windows side, when you buy a new Dell, the reason you're getting that Dell for $250 is because it comes preloaded with the amount of junk that you can't even imagine. The antivirus that's installed on that Dell that you turned on has been paid for by that antivirus company. They paid to leave it installed because they know next year you're going to go, oh yeah, antivirus, I'm just going to renew that for 25 or 30 or $100 per year. So this trend is becoming, I think personally, very dangerous. We remove all of that crapware because we took a stance and said, nobody wants toolbars. Nobody wants Bonsai Buddy jumping across the screen. Nobody wants their precious energy bill to be used for mining Bitcoin for a third party that they don't get a share of that, right? So we took this stance, and especially against Ask.com and My Web Search. I'm sure maybe some of you have heard of this, this crap. We took this stance because I told my team, let them take us to court. Let them put a person on the stand that will say happily, yes, I wanted my advertising that day. It just, nobody would do that for them. So we took that risk of just removing all of it. Who's to blame? I think the companies are. I think the companies truly are. Now, should the person be reading, what they're signing up for? A lot of these are pretty clear. I agree to have advertising injected into every page that I visit. Checked. You got to read when you install things. You got to know what you're installing. When you go to a website, make sure you're on the right website. It's not, fake antivirus.com. It's antivirus.com. So I think it's these businesses that are doing this to blame. The manufacturer of the Dell, the developer of the software that isn't making any money, so they decide to go down this route. I think they're the ones to blame. But the consumer really needs to be careful about what they're doing on their computer.
Follow-up question. Do you think that let's just assume that you're familiar with how when you're trying to get used to an Android environment for the first time, it just prompts you to like certain welcome screens, and it just has this button that says "Got it." And for myself, like personally as an Android user, I just think that if there's a button over there that actually says "Got it," it actually makes me read the prompts and actually follow and try to understand what they're trying to tell me. So do you think that little design cues, if changed onto Windows-based systems, would also try and prompt people to read more and understand a little bit better of what's going on?
Somebody somewhere is still going to click it. I think we have we have our own rules of engagement on what we do detect and what we don't detect. And a lot of it is where the placement of the buttons is and how they're trying to feed you this stuff, right? If the button is very clear and you have to type a code in it's very clear to the user what they're getting and it's not really that spammy, it's something that's useful, I think we let it go. Will it improve the consumer behavior of installing this stuff willingly? I don't know. I mean, people are still clicking links in Facebook that say, hey, I found a picture of you, click here, and then installing the app. Like, people are still going to do that, right? And there's a lot of it is user education. So.
Great, thanks.
Yep. David.
Hey there. There are clearly like a lot of draws to out to San Francisco when it comes to access to venture capital funding, the rich history, more people engaged in the startup scene. But you're also from Chicago, your family's from Chicago, and it's definitely cheaper in Chicago too. I was just wondering like what factors you considered before deciding to move out there and how you're looking at this in retrospect.
Yeah, so moving to the Bay Area was, first of all, I think a mini mistake that I made, right? We are where we are, and we're successful as a company, so I can't say it's a mistake per se. But the rent is double than it would be in Chicago. The engineers are double. We're 1 for 7 hiring engineers in the Bay Area. So we've hired 7, 6 of them have quit or have been fired. So we're not very good at that. We went to Clearwater, Florida, of all places. One guy, well, I digress, but not gonna talk about him. So it's very difficult because there's many great companies out there, right, that you're competing for talent with. So the company moved out there because I was going to the University of Illinois. Marcus was better equipped to hire people centrally. I was just coming down here when we opened the office, so I couldn't just open an office and start hiring engineers out of the university. He had connections and contacts and so on. Me personally, I moved to the Bay Area because my hands were handcuffed. We had an 95-person office there that I was flying Monday through Friday, racking up 300,000 miles and gaining 15 pounds in airplane food. So I decided for my health and for the health of the company, I would move out there. So that's the company and then why I did. But if I could do it otherwise, I mean, I'd definitely start something, at least an engineering office in Champaign or Chicago or Clearwater like we did.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Marcin, I'm sure it'll be the first of many thank yous, but from EOH committee to you, thank you for coming out. Really appreciate it. So you graduated from U of I here. You're obviously back here talking now. Is there anything specific you learned here in your academic career that has really stuck with you, that you really appreciate learning?
Yeah, so for the first 2 years, I was still developing the product actively. And everything I had known until I got to the University of Illinois was from a For Dummies book. Not really good. So every engineering class that I took had taught me something else, like engineering with colleagues, me and Doug. How are we going to work together and commit code at the same time, and data algorithms and data structures, and even security classes on campus were pretty good. The ethical hacking class was interesting. My talk there was about malware, and it got me into research state-sponsored malware. So definitely a ton of things I learned at the university. I learned about chemistry and physics for some reason as well. But I regret not taking more business and finance classes. I might have made mention of that. I would definitely do that. Even the basics. I didn't know how to balance a checkbook until college. Like, they don't teach you this in high school for some reason. So definitely a finance class or a marketing class or some kind of other classes like that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, how's it going? So as engineers, there's obviously, we're very non-risk adverse people. You kind of touched on that. And I'm sure we've all made a fair share of mistakes here, or as you called them, life learning lessons, right? But can you talk about maybe one of your bigger life learning lessons, how you addressed it and how you're moving on going forward?
This is a fun one. So Bruce, my research guy, the guy that I met in Massachusetts, he is a very, I don't like to travel, I like to be at home, typical, basement dweller, right? He wants to be in front of a computer, drink a bunch of Red Bull, and do nothing else but program or research. He was in the office. This is a rare occurrence. He was in the office, and I'm sitting in my little office typing away, and this was April something 2012, and he's completely white. And I go, "Are you okay? Are you feeling sick? Are you?" Yeah, we had a false positive. We got to talk. And what a false positive is when we detect something as malware that isn't malware, something legitimate on the computer. And I went, oh yeah, no, we'll resolve it. That's fine. We destroyed, not broke a little bit, destroyed 800,000 computers worldwide in 8 minutes. 911 call centers were down. Hospitals were down. Other essential systems were down. A lot of these have IT administrators that were able to bring it up, pretty quickly. But a 911 call center wasn't able to take calls. They had to reroute them elsewhere. In 8 minutes, we pushed out updates that just demolished these. And if Bruce hadn't pulled that back, it would have been 25 million computers. So how did we handle that situation, right? That was an oh shit moment. That was certainly one of those. It really showed me that actually I'm pretty good under pressure, and Bruce wasn't. Bruce went and got really mad. He got into his office. He shut the door. The traveling office. He shut the door. He started talking to his researchers. How do we stop this from happening again? I don't know what happened. Whereas I went on the offensive. I went, support team, we need you in the cube right now. Call everybody back. Within minutes, we're springing to action. Call everybody into the support queue. Get ready to answer phone calls. Get ready to email developers. I need you calling customers actively and saying, this is what happened. This is how we're going to fix it. This is how it will never happen again. I wrote a blog post immediately. I started taking calls myself. I put, this is how it happened. This is what happened. This is how it happened. This is how it will never happen again. And we put processes in place within 24 hours to stop that. Throttling of updates out to our users. False positive checking on more active systems, so being able to detect, what is a false positive and what isn't. But yeah, I mean, that's where, the team's got to come together and really operate, or you can just keel over and say 800,000 people are just angry at us and they're going to tell the world. We lost 3 customers. So.
Nicely done. Thank you.
Yep.
Hi. Once again, thanks for the talk. You talked about the quality of being a technical founder is always innovating. And I'm wondering is how do you keep that innovative drive going? Because if you're always trying to make it better, eventually I feel like the idea well will dry up a bit. So how do you keep making something that people want without adding something that people don't care about?
Yeah, this is a good question. So the way I've done it is to hire researchers that I've seen at other companies do really interesting stuff, and I kind of want that and take it to myself, right? So finding that talent that can help you innovate. I didn't mean in my talk, you do it all yourself for the next 30 years, right? Eventually there's going to be like you said, a pool that dries up and you've got no further ideas. But the stimuli around you, the people that are saying, well, what if we do it this way? And then you go, yeah, that, and then this, right? There's so much more beyond that idea that you just said. Getting that stimuli around you, the people that are just more brilliant than you and can help you with that idea and unravel that thread has helped me. I mean, we were starting to become stagnant on the anti-malware side where, files get installed, we block them, and that's it. Well, I found a guy named Pedro who was in Spain who built an anti-exploit where it's a completely different set of technologies. It was innovative in the market. Our solution was so much cheaper and so much lighter. It ran on the endpoint versus FireEye, for example, which sells a $100,000 box that you have to install in a server rack. So he kind of co-founded the idea, and I went, that sounds cool. Bruce, what do you think? Let's go get it, right? So surrounding yourself with those people is what gets you to the next stage. You can't do it alone.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right, the lines have become empty, so I think I've nope, there we go.
Okay, one more. I just want to build on his last question. I'm kind of short. So when you're looking at, long-term plans, you were talking about innovating. What do you do to try to prepare for something that just changes the game altogether?
Oh, that's just, I don't think that's possible, right? I don't think the taxi service industry ever thought that they would be decimated by Uber or Lyft, right? And it's really tough to prepare for those kinds of situations. You start thinking about I actually hate fads, and I think there are phases, like this security for mobile. There has been hundreds of millions invested, and not even $1 has really come out of that whole enterprise. So, yeah, I mean that's really tough to prepare for, and I don't have a good answer for that, and I'm okay admitting that.
Okay.
So,
all right,
we do our best.
Grew up with a very easy, rapid development software, Visual Basic.
Yeah.
What are you into now?
I got a pilot's license, but don't worry, I don't fly around here. You know, I haven't programmed in a while, actually. Work keeps me pretty busy. I'm trying to focus on the things I'm really bad at, right? So the sales, marketing, and finance side. I'm trying to become more developed in those areas, becoming more of a people person. So I'm networking more as I'm in the Bay Area. Networking was actually one of my worst qualities when Maboot gave me my 360 review of everybody around me. So I'm trying to just become more experienced in those areas. Non-technical, but it helps. And I'm trying to keep on top of all the newest gadgets and Fitbits and just try out cool hardware. But from a programming standpoint, they don't let me do that anymore. I don't know. Yeah. Cool.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Oh, boy. Just kidding, Nick.
When we were speaking earlier, I asked you if you hadn't been involved with entrepreneurship and you were a student here, would you have gone kind of the big company route or try to find something? And you said you'd go the big company route. So my question is, for those who are going the large corporation route and still have that interest in entrepreneurship, what is your advice from making that transition that you don't think you personally would have done well in to go into this environment that you obviously thrive in? So I'm kind of the opposite of what you would do. So
Yeah.
how would you go from big company to entrepreneurship?
Yeah. That's a good question. So I was able to take these risks at the University of Illinois because, or rather in high school, because my rent was paid, my food was paid, right? I'm in high school. My parents are taking care of everything, and it's a comfortable position. So I really don't know how I would have handled that situation, right? If I were in a position today where I'm working at Google or Amazon or something like that, maybe I'd use nights and weekends to start putting a concept together and just really, the hard work ethic that I have, put that to use and see if I can come out the other end. But when it's in high school, it's hard for me to answer that question because I feel blessed by being able to have that opportunity, get started early on, be surrounded by the right people at the right time. That's just not something I would have today, working at somewhere like Google or Amazon and having to pay my rent. And would I be taking those risks? I don't know, right? And it's a difficult. I'm not going to lie, right? It's an answer I just don't have a question I don't have the answer to. Yeah.
My son has a question for you.
You said you were running Windows on that Mac over there. How?
That's Windows. I ripped out the OS X software completely, reformatted, and put Windows 8.1 on it. So, and I just bought a MacBook Pro, and I'm going to be doing the same exact thing. I can't stand OS X. I have an iPhone, so I'm really schizo on that. But yeah, see Windows. I promise. All right, that's it for me. Thank you guys for coming. Really appreciate it.